Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Payoff Pitch. My name is Joey Olberding, and I will be your host for all things sports. So on this Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, I am really excited for today's Payoff Pitch. Why, you maybe ask, why is this different from other Payoff Pitches, Joey? Well, it's my favorite time of the year, one of my favorite times of the year in all of sports, and yes, that is the start of the MLB season. I love the MLB, I love baseball, and I love all sports. I love basketball, I love football, but baseball is my favorite because I know it the best, I would say. I know basketball very well, I know football very well, but I have always loved baseball, and I look at this upcoming season and the season that's already got a few games in. Today's the 10th of April, so it's been about 2 weeks of the MLB season thus far. But I want to talk going through, this 2 weeks and thinking about what I predict will happen. Mostly the awards that are going to be presented at the end of the MLB season, but I'll be going over some other things. And so I would say let's get right into it, and first I'm going to be talking about my underrated players of the year. Players I think are going to fly under the radar, some more than others, but all in some aspect. So, starting things off in terms of that underrated player list is a player who hit 40 home runs once in his career and one of the toughest ballparks to do it. Granted, that was 9 years ago. Adrian Gonzalez, who now plays for the New York Mets, is actually supposed to be the backup first baseman for the New York Mets. But the thing is, another player who's hit over 30 home runs and was destined to maybe be a Hall of Famer in his 20s, David Wright, who's now plagued by injuries and hasn't really had a full season since the year 2012. That is 6 years ago. That's insane. Who was supposed to be the starting first baseman, got injured again, and he's going to be out until mid-May. And so because of that, Adrian Gonzalez is going to have a big opportunity to shine. And the thing about Adrian Gonzalez is throughout his career, he's always been kind of on the down low. He's always been kind of underrated because he used to play for the Padres. That was his best season. And a team like the Padres, who is in California with so many big teams like in Los Angeles and San Francisco, they don't really get as, noted as some of those other teams. Like you'll see the Dodgers get, tons of credit. The Angels this year have gotten a lot with Shohei Ohtani. But the thing is, Adrian Gonzalez throughout his entire career has been very good, and now that he is the backup first baseman for the Mets, he's been very underrated. Because people are thinking, okay, he's not his old self, but Adrian Gonzalez, he is a player, and he will go out and he will do his best that he can possibly do. And Adrian, even when David Wright comes back, if David Wright stays healthy, which in my opinion, I don't think he will, Adrian will still get plenty of time playing first base because baseball is not a game where all the starters are playing all the time in every single game. So that'll give Adrian plenty of time anyway. Now, I have some honorable mentions, I suppose. I always love to highlight this because everybody never talks about it. The Rockies have a great rotation. The Rockies have a solid rotation. John Gray, Tyler Chatwood, notable others. And the thing about them is that because they play in Colorado and they play in Coors Field, and Coors Field is notorious for being, a great place for hitters to hit home runs. Really easy for the ball to carry because of the thin air in that area. But the rotation in Colorado was hyped up and has been doing very well. A team 4.51 ERA at Coors Field, which you may be thinking, 4.51, that's not very good. That's about the ERA of an average pitcher. But taking the fact the Coors Field effect, where Coors Field, as previously mentioned, is the most hitter-friendly park that really is out there, and that is something to behold. And take into account the Rockies' great offense, and I think any pitcher on the Rockies is really an underrated player this year, no matter how good they actually are. Now, I would like to highlight two players here, but I'll go with each of them. I'll highlight both of them in different ways. The first one is Freddie Galvis. Freddie Galvis used to play for the Phillies organization. Now he plays for the Padres organization. And the thing about him is he's always been, much like a guy like Adrian Gonzalez, on the down low. People don't recognize that he's not a bad player. Because he played in the Phillies organization around 2013, 2014, where they were one of the worst teams in the league. And the thing about them is that they were playing guys who should be bench players as their starters. So people looked at Freddie Galvis as, okay, he's all right, he doesn't do much. But the thing about Galvis is he put up consistently good numbers for years and years. And he played all 162 games last year, which is really hard to do, especially when you're going after it about 162 games in a row, 162 days in a row. He had 29 doubles in Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia, and now when he's going to Petco Park, which is in San Diego, he will definitely have a big opportunity to be able to make those doubles into triples. Because Citizens Bank Park is an average-sized park. Petco Park is huge compared to all of them. It's about the opposite of the Rockies field and Coors Field, and the fact that, while it's really easy to hit home runs in Coors Field, you can hit 40 easily there. It's not easy to hit them in Petco Park, which is why the feat of Adrian Gonzalez hitting 40 home runs there in 2009 is almost impossible to fathom in today's game. Even though power has emerged as a bigger and bigger threat with guys like Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, only hitting home runs really, and still being Hall of Fame threats for the future, quite possibly. But he will be able to make this doubles into triples, and because of that, he will also be able to make a big difference for the Padres, and maybe, just maybe, make them do a little better than they would have otherwise. The other guy I'm going to highlight is Cesar Hernandez. With Freddie Galvis, he used to play for that Phillies organization that wasn't so good in 2013 and 2014, being one of the worst teams in the league. The thing, unlike Freddie Galvis, though, is that Cesar Hernandez still plays in Philadelphia and is still really underrated, even though, in my opinion, he's better than Freddie Galvis. He's posted WAR numbers of over 3, 2 straight years. 2 straight years may not seem a lot, but he's 28 now, and he's doing a lot better, and this is his prime of his career. And also, he went from a bench player to now a huge part of the Phillies' future, or Phillies organization in general. And why? Because he's drawn over 60 walks in the past 2 years. He's really come out of his shell, but because of the fact that he doesn't really hit home runs, he's still underrated, even though he can be a total threat. Kendrys Morales is another guy I always like to highlight as an underrated player. Not because he's necessarily an underrated player, it's just that his value is often gone underappreciated because of the fact that he only hits home runs. That's why, for his entire career, he's been a perfect fit in the AL, where there's a DH. He is a home run hitter. He is a swing and miss guy. Not as much as he used to be. He's smarter now, but he will hit home runs for you. And that means he will drive in runs for you. And if you don't care about, maybe a strikeout or two, he's the perfect guy for you. And he's played for the Blue Jays for the past few years. And the thing about him is in 7 out of the past 9 years, he's hit 20-plus home runs. And those 2 years where he hasn't hit 20-plus home runs have been plagued by injuries, playing 58 games and 14 games, respectively. He is a perfect DH for the Jays, the Blue Jays, who are a swing and miss team to the very core. They only hit home runs or they only strike out, and that's how they've gone since, well, I suppose 10 years or 9 years or for a while. He's a guy that goes under the radar year after year, even though he's a very, very powerful hitter. Another guy just like him, and this will be my last underrated player so far because I know there have been a lot. Pedro Alvarez is a guy that's a lot like Kendrys Morales, except he's been more plagued by injuries as of late. He's missed almost all of the past 2 seasons, and of course when you're going into a new season, that doesn't look very good for you. But I think Pedro Alvarez is a guy who, he's inconsistent, and his best year was about 2013, which 5 years ago, and he's now 31. But he can hit, man. he can hit bombs, and much like Kendrys Morales, especially more now, if you need somebody who can hit home runs and you don't care about strikeouts, he's the guy to go. Kendrys Morales doesn't really strike out as much anymore, but Pedro Alvarez, he strikes out more, but he also hits more home runs, and he has as of late. So I think if you need a big home run hitter, he's the guy to go, and he's going to go underrated because of the fact that he's in injuries for the past 2 years. All right, that was all fun. That was all, okay, underrated players. None of them are going to do great, Joey. Come on, let's move on to the big stuff. All right, then. Let's talk about Cy Young Awards. So, we're going to go straight into the American League Cy Young Award. And I'm going for the winner from last year, Corey Kluber of the Cleveland Indians. Corey Kluber is one of those pitchers, one of those more old-school pitchers in the fact that he is a workhorse. He can pitch inning after inning after inning and lock them down. And I think he's the best pitcher in the AL. People always talk about a guy who's finished in the top Cy Young voting in 6 straight years in Chris Sale. Chris Sale, who used to play for the Chicago White Sox, now plays for the Boston Red Sox. And he is also a great pitcher. And the thing about them is they both have nasty pitches that are pretty much defined their entire career. For Corey Kluber, that would be his amazing changeup, which I think is the best since Pedro Martinez, now a Hall of Famer, who did it in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Chris Sale's slider is about as good of a slider as you can find since Randy Johnson, who's also in the Hall of Fame. See, they're very similar in that aspect, and I think that really this is going to be an AL Cy Young Award that will come down to the wire. But I think Corey Kluber just has a better team behind him. The Cleveland Indians have been a great team. They went to the 2016 World Series, went to Game 7 against the Chicago Cubs, and the Red Sox have not done that. The last championship they won was in 2013, and they did not have Chris Sale then, and they had a completely different squad. And this team is a lot younger, and I think it will take another year or two before the Red Sox truly become another great team, another team that can win 2 World Series in the span of 10 years, or maybe even 3 World Series in the span of 10 years. That was nice. AL Cy Young. But, NL Cy Young is probably more interesting in my opinion. Once again, I have the winner from last year winning the NL Cy Young, which will be his 3rd consecutive, if I'm correct. Max Scherzer is one of the best pitchers I've ever seen, and I've seen quite a few good pitchers in my young lifetime. However, Max Scherzer, winning 2 Cy Youngs by itself is amazing. Winning 3 Cy Youngs is crazy. Winning 2 Cy Youngs in a row and 3 in the past 4 years is really crazy. Max Scherzer is another workhorse, just like Corey Kluber, but he may be even better. He's been posting ERAs that are 3.15 and lower in the past 5 years. He's 33, but judging by the supreme pitching that he's had so far and the fact that he shut out the Reds on opening day, he has not lost that. Also, in the past 5 years, the lowest WAR that he's had is 5.7, the highest 7.1 last year. However, joining pitchers like Kershaw, who's very worthy, Bumgarner, who I love, but he has a big injury, and he just came back from that motorbike incident, that infamous one, in which that got him out for the season, which was very unfortunate, is another pitcher that I'd like to mention who pitches for the Pirates. Jamison Talion is a guy that isn't very well known. He is not a guy that many people know whatsoever. So, who is this guy, Joey, and why do you predict that he'll do so well? Well, this guy, I've rused you all, is another guy in the underrated players list. You thought I was done with that. I was not. But the thing about him is that he's 26, and he's only in his 3rd season going into 2018. And he hasn't done a whole lot. But the thing about him is that he shut down one of the best offenses in the league in the Cincinnati Reds. The Cincinnati Reds have a great offense, and he one-hit them and was a shutout. It didn't really make the MLB news all that much, unfortunately. But they have a very good offense, and the Pirates, Well, the Pirates, they just came out and they did well, and Talion, a one-hitter against the Reds, and I think Talion, he showed promise in spring training. He did very well. Right now, he's an ERA of 1.26 through the first 2 weeks of the season. Now, always there's, somebody that's like, oh man, they start off so well, but then they fall off. Talion, though, I think has the chance to be a very underrated contender, and I think he will finish in the top 10 in NL Cy Young voting, which may not seem like a lot, but it's always the usual suspects with the Cy Young Award, especially, in the MLB, and that's usually the case in, some other sports, but it's especially evident in the MLB because players win awards many times, or at least get contention for MLB awards, just because of what they've done in previous seasons, which makes sense in theory, but when you look at the players themselves, you don't really understand that. Players who don't really get all that much of recognition, like somebody who plays on a poor team so far through the season, or predicted to be poor, like the Pirates, probably won't win, definitely, no matter how he does, but if I'm right and he does pitch a very good season, then I think he will, at the very least, finish in the top 10. Okay, so Cy Young. Alright, that's fun, but move on to the MVP, Joey. Okay. Here we are. AL MVP. Somebody different. No, it's not. Jose Altuve won the AL MVP last year. He's gonna win it again. Why? Astros, solid squad, great squad. They have so much talent, but Jose Altuve is the leader of that group. He has been wildly consistent, but it's only getting better. Over the past 4 years, the lowest Warriors had was 4.8. The first of those 4 years that was in, and the highest coming last year was 8.3. Not to mention, he's a Gold Glove Award winner and a Silver Slugger for 4 straight years, batting over .310 in each of those past 4 seasons, and being the league leader in 3 of those years in average. And the lowest average he's ever had was .276 in his rookie season. And of course, the AL, there's so many players in the AL, and a player like Mike Trout, who's always viewed as one of the best, maybe the best player in the entire league, will be in the running of AL MVP. That's just going to be the way it is. But I think it also has to do with team performance, like it was with Corey Kluber and Chris Sale. And the Angels have a pretty good team this year, but the Astros, World Series winners as they were, they just have the bigger advantage, and they have more experience. The Angels have a lot of guys who are coming together from free agency, who are coming together, who just got signed. Zach Cozart, Justin Upton, Shohei Ohtani, the big guy. Everybody's talking about him. But they aren't really fit. They haven't been to the playoffs since they've kind of changed gears. They've kind of shifted gears. They've never been to the playoffs with Mike Trout. So I think that the Astros will definitely have the advantage in the AL West because they play in the same division. So that's why I think that Jose Altuve just ekes out Mike Trout. And for the NL MVP, this one's really tough. There are so many guys that are there. Bryce Harper, Nolan Arenado, there's Max Scherzer, of course, there's Paul Goldschmidt, there's Joey Votto. But I had to pick Nolan Arenado. Nolan Arenado plays for the Rockies, and as I mentioned before, the Rockies play in Coors Field, so automatically there is a disadvantage for him. But Nolan Arenado is 27, and he's heading into the prime of his career, and this will probably be the prime of his career. Why is it different from other years? Well, let me explain. He's a star hitter, but the biggest part of him is his defense. His defense is some of the best recognized in league history. He's one of the best defenders at third base ever. And he's won Gold Gloves each of the years that he's been in the league since 2013. He's won a Gold Glove every single one of those years. 2013 Gold Glove, 2014 Gold Glove, 2015 Gold Glove, 2016 Gold Glove, 2017 Gold Glove. Well, I don't think he's going to slow down going into the prime of his career. His offense is also very good. He's batting .291 for his career, and the lowest average he's had in the past 3 years being .287, which is barely lower, and he's hitting 120 home runs in the past 3 seasons. Part of that is the Coors effect, But that's 40 home runs per year, and a lot of that's been on the road. You play half the season at home, half the season on the road. And those numbers being 42 home runs, 41 home runs, and 37 home runs. And the higher numbers are being league leading in 42 and 41, while also leading the league in RBIs those same years. His fantastic defense really is the thing. His WAR, too, has been 3.8, 4.1, 5.8, 6.6, and then 7.2 last year. It's only been improving, and I think this will be the year where he finally makes the jump to maybe make people disregard the Coors effect. There will always be people who don't think of the road or anything. They just think of the home territory and the thin air. But I think this will be different. Max Scherzer, as previously mentioned, will probably be in the NL race, even though he's a pitcher. It goes to show, pitchers never win. Pitchers don't win very often, and I don't think this is going to be a year where that's going to be different. Though Max Scherzer is going to have a fantastic year, he's not going to be as good as Nolan Arenado. Now, another player who's definitely in the race, and who may definitely win that, is Paul Goldschmidt, the first baseman for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And he also plays fantastic defense and does not play in Coors Field, so honestly, it's very likely that he could win. He's actually younger than Nolan Arenado, being 26, and he could just take it because of the fact that Coors Field itself is such a controversial ballpark, and because of that alone, he could take it. But I think it's going to be one of those two. Bryce Harper of the Washington Nationals is also going to have another fantastic season, but I think that it'll come down to those two. And a guy like Joey Votto, he's kind of a subpar defensive first baseman. He's widely known for his offense, his great eye, and being able to just hit the ball anywhere. But Votto is not a good defensive first baseman, which is not said of Bryce Harper or of Nolan Arenado or of Paul Goldschmidt, so I don't think he'll win, but I think it'll come down to Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, and I think that Nolan Arenado can just make that jump. Going to the complete opposite of the underrated player of the year is the disappointment of the year. The disappointment of the year is the guy who's been heavily hyped up, and I don't think will perform at all, or maybe not at the level that's expected. I think this guy may be good, but he won't be what everybody's expecting. That guy for me is Giancarlo Stanton, who now plays for the New York Yankees. Giancarlo Stanton is a guy who, he hits home runs, and he had his first fantastic season that didn't have any injuries last year for the Miami Marlins. Now, he's going to the New York Yankees, which has some crazy powerhouses. Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez are the big ones, especially Aaron Judge. I don't think Stanton will have a bad year, but in the first 2 weeks of the season, he struck out 5 times in one game. Twice. Now, not only is that terrible, by itself, that's only happened 2 other times in MLB history where people have struck out 5 times in one game, twice in a season, and those were both over 100 games into the season. This one happened 5 games into the season. So that just shows how that is not a very good track record, and Giancarlo Stanton doesn't have any home runs on the season either. Why do I think he's not going to have a good year? Why don't I think he's going to bounce back? I think he's going to bounce back. But the thing is, I think he's just has so much pressure on him. So many people are covering him saying, oh, he and Judge, they'll team up, they'll do amazing things. They're going to hit like 100 bombs, just the two of them combined, which most teams reach about 120 as a team. Judge or Sanchez will be definitely more consistent because of the fact that they've played in Yankee Stadium for all of their careers, and they know what the fans expect. Giancarlo Stanton does not know that, and he's been booed twice, those 2 games where he struck out 5 times in one game. So I think it all comes down to Giancarlo Stanton not going to have a bad year, but just won't hit expectations whatsoever. Other honorable mentions or dishonorable mentions are Lorenzo Cain, who now plays for the Milwaukee Brewers, who's 31, and his entire career he's been known for his speed and the fact that he can get defensive plays and he can't really hit. That road does not end well for many players. When you have speed, you're in your 30s, and that's all you're known for. Another guy is Nick Castellanos, who plays for the Detroit Tigers, the third baseman for them. He's been hyped up a lot this year, and honestly, I don't understand why. Nick Castellanos has been an okay to good player for the majority of his career, but I think he's just that. Good. I don't think he's going to turn into the great player that the Tigers need. And Madison Bumgarner, who I previously mentioned, has those injuries, and I don't think, although I love him, I don't think that he'll be able to come back and do as well as people hoped. Final thing. World Series winner. The World Series winner. I didn't talk at all about any of the teams themselves, almost at all, but I'm going to go for who I think is going to win the World Series. In the World Series, Diamondbacks, Astros. Diamondbacks are going to win in 7 over the previous champion Houston Astros. It'll be another fantastic series. The Houston Astros, with guys like George Springer and Carlos Correa, they're going to be able to launch balls and they're going to be able to hit home runs. However, they won't be able to really produce much offense, like 2-run home runs and 3-run home runs and even grand slams, because of the solid pitching that's going to be thrown out by the Diamondbacks. With guys like Robbie Ray and Zach Greinke, these guys will be able to definitely shut down the rest of the Astros offense, aside from maybe a few home runs. And I think they'll be able to propel to a victory in 7 games because of that. Zach Greinke will be your World Series MVP because of his fantastic performance he puts on in Game 7 of the World Series. And yeah, that's it. It'll be a 3-1 victory in Game 7. Zach Greinke will pitch 7 and a third. And that'll be the 2018 MLB season. And those were my predictions. Those were all the predictions that I have. Well, I hope that you thought that these made at least a little bit of sense. So from me, Joey Olberding, I hope that you enjoyed this edition of the Payoff Pitch. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at SoCo Club. Make sure to check us out on TuneIn Radio on 95.7. And from me, Joey Olberding, I hope you'll stay tuned to 95.7 for all things Payoff Pitch and so much more.